You're listening to the Irish Rally Podcast. This podcast is sponsored by FAC, the simply automatic choice for automation equipment for gates, doors, barriers and rising bollards. Available from your security installer and electrician. Distributed to the trade in Ireland North and South by National Automation, the one-stop distributor for automation equipment, door entry intercom systems, CCTV, intruder and fire alarms, access control and locks. For more information, visit nal.ie/products. Hello and welcome along to a brand new season of the Irish Rally Podcast. Well, we may not have much competitive action to talk about still on the Irish stages. However, we will continue to explore the various aspects of Irish rallying and offer some insight into things that happen on and off the stages with car prep, event organisation and many other areas among our offerings over the coming months. We begin this season with a bang, and when you think of Irish rallying and indeed Irish sporting greats in general, the name McHale is instantly recognisable. Having competed for over 35 years, Austin MacHale amassed many great accolades, none more so than winning a record 5 Irish Tarmac Championships, a record which has yet to be beaten in the 23 years since McHale achieved it in his beautiful Celica in 1998. It did seem bizarre to me that such a sporting great had never really got to tell his own story in detail, despite having achieved so much. But thankfully we managed to have a lengthy chat over the past few weeks, and for the first time we hear in depth about the life and times of Austin MacHale over 2 fascinating episodes. We begin our conversation with childhood memories, sporting interests and how Austin became involved in Irish rallying.
Yeah, I suppose really the way like all people when you're younger will go to school and that sort of thing, the GAA would be a big thing, and when national school at the start of secondary school and that you played a lot of football, and obviously got a bit older then went into motorsport, but I suppose the thing, motorsport was always the thing that was in my mind from a young age, coming from farming background and reared on a farm. We were driving tractors probably since we were very young, and we always enjoyed when hay and stuff like that, and then at the back of the tractor, the front of the tractor, not steers all the weight on the back, you'd have the steers on the brakes, that sort of thing, which was brilliant, and that was, a part of the reason for motorsport, and, the follow on when we got a bit, obviously, 16, 17, at that age, I've gone to see some of the rallies and been living in the news. The Circuit of Ireland used to pass fairly close, for Sally Gap would be on, and Akabana, and then stages, and some stages down in Meath, and all spectacular and that, so I suppose the next move would be to get a rally car, probably trying to think back, like I've been thinking back 40 years now, really, or the start of me in rallying was with a good friend of mine, still is, Fergal Allen. We bought a next racing car guy in Mandela, I can't think, Vinnie Moy was his name actually, and it's the Ford Anglia, and we bought the car between us, and we did 2 or 3 rallies with that. The first rally we were going to, Fergal and myself, was the car wasn't really ready, and we just put a new engine in, and they were being built, and we took it out for a test run, and Fergal was behind me, and I was driving on the headlights of the car behind, and I put it off into a ditch with the lights in, and sort of got a shadow, and that was the end of that rally. But I did a few rallies in it, started like the hideout in Kildare, just based on a Kilcullen in Kildare, which was very close to Maynooth, and that was half navigational, half forestry. And then we done a couple of fast runs and stuff like that over maybe the next year or 18 months, and Fergal did some events in the car as well, and he did the same. So that was the start, really.
Yeah, so there was no other kind of temptations to, play other sports, or it was always going to be rallying. It seems like a fairly straightforward thing for you that the rally was going to be number one.
Well, it was, yeah. At that stage, we were sort of 17, 18, 19, and maybe I wasn't good enough for the football anyway. But I felt that in motorsport that you had to have it's going to be very competitive, and you'd have to your ability in rallying was dependent on you and your co-driver, and obviously the car preparation and that. But it's up to the driver and the co-driver, whereas the football team you have another 14 people to help you. And I thought this was always rallying was sort of an extra special. So by the way we started, that was sort of in 70, I would have been probably 73, 74. or 75, and we bought an Escort Twin Cam in 75, which was the first real rally car that we had, and we done the likes of the Ravens Rock, Coleman Rally, and a lot of stuff like that, the Hellfire and that in the car, in the Twin Cam, and got class wins and second and third in class. And so our first international win was in 1996 in the Escort Twin Cam, and I had another good friend of mine, Dermot O'Neill, co-driving for me, and Dermot lived in Maynooth, slowly down the road. He ended up as brother-in-law of mine afterwards, which was fantastic. But he had a really enjoyable Galway International that year in 1976, and it was really good, So that car, we had it for maybe, I think it was about up to the end of 1977. Got a lot of good results again over the years with it, but we moved on in sort of 78 to a Mark 1 RS 2000, and again did some of the internationals. Wasn't really that successful, but we got in the class wins and maybe in the first 10 overall and stuff like that. And we really bitten the book at that stage, and we moved on from that in the same year to an RS 2000 Mark 2, which was the Group N car as well. And in 79, we did the RSC, and I did New Codrive, we did West Cork, and etc. In the RSC, we retired World Championship Rally. Circuit of Ireland, we were leading Group N, and was off the road. And did a few good results as well, So that was sort of 79, and then in 80 we sort of stayed the RS 2000. Had a lot of a few Group N wins in national and international. We did Cork. We'll probably start the year with Big Galway, then it was the Henley Bartlett, I think, international rally, and I think we won the class in that, and probably one in the top 10. We had the West Cork, and I think we retired in West Cork. And then we had the Circuit of Ireland, and we did the Welsh actually that year as well, and we were lying in the second. We've been overall on a roll in Wales, which was a well-advertised roll, so it was over the top of the bank, but that was the way it went. That was sort of 1980. 81 we did in the RS 2000s, and we had the start of the year, we said we'd give the British Championship a push because we were competitive in the previous year. So we did, that was the year that we did the Mentex was the first round, and John McGee had been with me for the last 2 years in the RS 2000, so he was with me in the Mentex as well. And it was coincidence, we finished third overall. The conditions were very bad, slippy, snow, ice, and that sort of thing, but there was a thing we call a passage control, and after the first stage we missed the passage control. We were gone maybe about 5-10 miles up the road, maybe a bit less, and John discovered that he had missed the passage control, as we had to do a U-turn and come back and get his car stopped at the passage control, and send him straight into the forest, and probably fairly well wound up, and with people sort of some of the competitors at the start of the next stage weren't really prepared to get somebody else with the forest before and cleared away in the snow, etc. But we went straight forward on it, and we got a very good result in the event, and that was a good start for 81. And Rachel won, and then I think Jimmy McRae was second. And we followed on from that, then obviously the next round for the British Championship that year would be the Circuit of Ireland. We were leading the Group N class up in Donegal in the night stages by something like, I think it was about 12 minutes, and a guy called Mike Stewart, who was second in the Mentex, was behind us, and we got caught in the night. I was over a crest, with 90 left, and I was reading the road, the hedge going straight on, and off into the field about 50 metres down into the field. So that was the end of that, and that was put a bit of a damper in for the British Championship. But the next round of the British Championship we did that year was the Welsh International. John McGee again was with me, so we finished that second in class, which was pretty good, and I think we're 9th or 10th overall. And then obviously the next round was the Ulster, and we won the class there. And the Manx, and that was the Manx was the first rally that Christy Farrell did with me actually in 1981 in the RS 2000, and we won the class there as well. So it put me in a very strong position for the British Championship. I think that we won the Group M that year, so I was very happy with that. So we did the RAC then, sort of maybe going to be our last year in the RS 2000, and I had a guy called Martin Fail with me, which was the late Brian Patterson organised, the co-driver, and we were leading Group M and leading it comfortably, but we got caught in a Ford and dropped something like 5 minutes, and car just conked out. So that was that, and we got it going again, anyways, and we were back up to within about 30 seconds of the lead in Group M, and the same thing happened again. So I think Martin sort of threw the bunks there, and he says, this is ridiculous, the car won't go through the water, but we didn't have the experience of the water Ford that we were using in the RAC and the World Championship event at that stage, but we ended up second in the class, in a World Championship. After losing all the time, we wasn't too disappointed, I suppose. We could be still sitting out in the forest with a car stuck there,
Absolutely. So it seemed from that season, Austin, in 1981, and the Mintex in particular, with that fantastic result, that garnered great confidence to yourself. And, you pushed on then into 82 and made a kind of I suppose, a really prolonged push on the Irish Tarmac Championship. And it was with the Vauxhall Chevette as well. So obviously your results in 81 contributed towards that changeover in 82 as well, and I'm sure a bit of backing came on board around that period.
Yeah, well, really, we had got a lot of results, and we had a lot of wins in the RS 2000, and the next move was to go to the top league, and that was either a Chevette, an Escort, an RS 1800, or whatever was competitive at the time. The Oakland Skoda was there, and the Manta as well, so we went for the Chevette, went for the Vauxhall, and it was a very good car. FER 687 was the reg of it, and first time out of the car was in Galway, and we got 5th overall. But I can't remember who won it, but it would be in a very competitive field anyway. And we did Wexford shortly afterwards. We won Wexford, and which we were delighted with, and went to Donegal. We didn't finish in Donegal, and the next one we did was the Ulster, and that was the start of beating Bertie Fisher. He was out in an RS 1800 Escort, and he actually won. He won the Ulster that year, and he was Bertie's first international win. And we were lying second, third from early on, and we got a puncher, and we finished up, I think, about 6th or thereabouts. But, it was the start of beating up with Bertie, and which was a competition was going to. We didn't realise at that time, there'd be another 20 years of head-to-head competition rallies in Ireland and in Britain,
Absolutely, and what a special relationship it was. I mean, a great rivalry, but also a great friendship, as you said, for many years. And, we'll go on to it a little bit later, no doubt, in our conversation, but just to touch briefly on it, I mean, it was fairly well established or fairly well known that although you were great competitors and you do happen to win against each other, you'd be the first boys to have a pint together afterwards. I mean, that's pretty unique to rallying, in my opinion, anyway.
Well, it is, yeah. It could be always on events. There'd be the rivalry, of course there was. There was a flag drops, the saying goes, flat out. And, there's a lot of competitive drivers around at that stage. You had Vincent Bonner, Sonny Hall, and you had Billy Coleman, and obviously got years of experience prior to that around, and Richie Healy, very, very competitive. Frank Marr was on the way up, and Bertie was there, so you're going to get nothing easy. So to get any sort of a decent result, you really had to fight for it, and you had to have everything done properly. But at the start of 83, Christy Farrell came with me full time, and rallying in Ireland at that time was blind. I think the Ulster was the other one that wasn't. I can't remember, but Chris was very good on reading maps from years up to navigational events. And he did a lot of navigational events with his brother John Farrell, and he was really excellent on that. So I contacted Christy, and thank God Christy came with me, and he was a big help. And he did save me for a lot of accidents, because he would know when there was a real haymaker coming up, that you could be 10 cents, and he'd know when to cut back a little bit or what was going to come. But that was the part success for 83. We won the championship. It was the first time that first Tarmac Championship to win, and we won our first international, which was Cork 20 at the end of the year. So we had led a lot of the rounds. We led Donegal, and we got 3 punchers, and we were retired on the surface, and we won Cork, and we're in the first 3, I think it was in Killarney. So it was a good year, and we got the championship then to turn it off at the end of the year, which wasn't bad.
For Austin MacHale, it's now only a case of driving to the Champagne in Cork City, and so to his first international win. Non-destructive testing Vauxhall in the hands of Austin MacHale and Christy Farr takes the top award. Both are well deserving of the honour. For McHale from Rathcoole, Dublin, the bad luck occurrences are now a thing of the past.
Well, they say the first one is always the sweetest, and I'm sure that's the one that is probably, the most fondest, I assume, in your opinion anyway. Maybe I'm wrong in saying that, but they always say the first one is the sweetest.
I tell you, yeah, you have the best memories on it, and especially being fairly young in them years, it was great to get the results. It was a completely private team, and obviously it was a big help then because we were talking to Opel Ireland, a guy called Jim Donnelly, and it was all being based around there. The Manta, the Ascona has been very competitive, and obviously been replaced. The Manta and the bees knees car to get in was the Opel Manta 400, and we were lucky enough to, after about 6 months, putting everything together with Opel Ireland to get the deal together for the Manta 400, and we had it for the first round of the championship, which was the Galway International in 1984. Unfortunately, we didn't finish Galway, but we did a very good PR job done because the guy that was MD of Opel Ireland at the time was American, a guy called David Stenson. Yeah. And we was out on the Friday night. We went in a sweeper car on the Saturday and Sunday, and I took Dave Stenson for the run. And that really got him into motorsport. He thought it was never one of the best sports he was ever involved in. And it really made him solid for the backing for Opel Ireland for the next 4 years, which was great. So it wasn't all the doom and gloom. At least that worked very well, and nobody taking David. So the next round, obviously, then after the Tarmac Championship and the British Championship was the Circuit of Ireland, and it was a huge entry with all British Championship round groups. McRae, obviously Bertie was there, and lots of McHale and a lot of people like that. That was doing the European Championship. He was around the European Championship as well, but it ended up anyway with obviously Porsche in that year was with Henry Tyven, and he was leading, and the Porsche would be probably 2 seconds of a gain on the Manta at the time, because it was a very powerful car, and this was really a good car, the 911. But just left coming out of Killarney between the Porsche really and the two Mantas, which was Coleman and ourselves, and they were something like 2.5 minutes behind Coleman coming out of Waterford, not Killarney, Waterford that year. And by the time we got to Galway, had Billy nearly caught, and by the time we got to Letterkenny, we were something like about 2.5 minutes ahead of him. So we thought it was going to be fairly easy to the finish, save the car, etc. But unfortunately, our engine let go with 2 McHale stages left, and it was fairly devastating for after 5 days, to lose the rally like that. But that's the way it goes.
Well, just on the whole 2 seconds a mile difference with the Porsche, then what did you kind of do to make up those 2 seconds, and obviously go a little bit further than that as well? Apart from obviously drive the door handles off it, I mean, there's obviously a little bit of you had to be very brave in trying to make up that time, and obviously to go on better again.
Henry Tyven, and he was leading the rally, and he was leading the rally nearly from the word go, and he was something like, I think he was about 6 minutes ahead, and he had an accident in water or something with him. He was out the go-kart. You probably remember that. Ross was doing some go-kart thing, and he caught his wrist or whatever.
That's right. Yeah, he was all strapped up. Yeah.
But that was the reason why. But the gearbox went to the car wasn't his fault really. So the gearbox went and he was out of the event. But yes, the Carrera, like I mean, he was wiping everybody. You know, McRae, Brooks, and the cream of Europe really. And he's obviously a pretty driver as well. But the car was very, very competitive. You know, and Rosman fought a really good job on it. But it ended up really that it was a two-way battle. For the end with the Mantas, because the likes of him without the event, you know, 3/4 ways through, you know. So, but yeah, it's a devastating for us that was, but that was it. It was on, and you know, we finished up second in Donegal. I can't remember who. I think it was Coleman that year in Donegal. Then the Ulster we didn't finish. The Ulster we had an accident. The Ulster and we did Wexford and a few more. So we had a couple more wins and maybe seconds in that, you know. So I'm not sure whether we won we did some of the small rallies. I can't remember now what they were. But you know, some of the national rounds and that. But that was sort of the end of 84, and then 85 we were sort of saying we had to go really to try and get the championship. And we first round, you know, and it's all the thing about Galway, and it's the thing about Galway that if you win the first round you have a very good chance of winning the championship. And we won Galway, and we didn't finish in the circuit. And in Donegal, we were second again. And I don't know where we finished on the Manchester or the Ulster. I think probably the first 5 or that. I don't know. But we won the Cork 20, and that meant that we won the championship. And we were leading Killarney that year. By I don't know what it was, we're something like half a minute quicker than the up Moss Gap, and Balakbima, just at the end of the stage, out over a crest, was a rock in the grass, and I didn't see it. And I kicked the wheel, and a tyre burst, and there was a right hand corner nearly immediately afterwards, and I slid off into the bottom. That was the end of that retirement. But I think we had the championship won before Killarney, you know, which made it all worthwhile.
Yeah, but obviously that first year in 84, which brought you into 85, you know, you got that year under the belt in the new car. And you would have had things fairly fine-tuned for 85 then, which led to you going on to win that championship for the second time, of course.
Yeah, the Manta was still very competitive, and getting the second championship was one of the things all worthwhile. So, you know, so moving on to sort of 86, and we still had the Manta in 86, and we started with Galway, really, and I can't remember where we finished in Galway that year. In 86.
But that's the event, obviously, where Bertie had the massive scare with the spectators with the brake failure. I'm really certain that's the same one.
And the brake caliper went on his. I was in Central Ireland, where there was a year of the battle with Mark Lovell in the Works Ford RS 200, which was probably the last year of supercars really in a way, and we had a major battle with 10 to hold for, you know, for the first two-wheel drive cars. But I think Dave Llewellyn won it that year in the Metro, as far as I can remember. But you know, the overall we were happy enough, and we did Donegal. We had a problem in Donegal. In 87 was leading Donegal actually that year. I think Coleman actually won it. He was in a 6 or 4, and we put it off on McHale with a huge lead. We had 3.5-4 minute lead, and it was loose on the road on stage at the end of McHale. It was up to hit a pole, and that was the end of that. So we did one of our first Spartan rallies. Then we went on the rally, Cordiangles rally in Spain, you know, and in the Gran Canaria. So it was a bit of a trip for the lads after all the work they've done a few years previous to that, you know. So it was that was interesting, and but I think we won Killarney at the end of the year, anyways. Then the Cork 20, I think we were second.
And a back-to-back championship titles.
Yeah, I think we got the championship in '86. I think that was our third championship win.
Yeah,
and it was because there was 2 wins for the Manta, you know, and 1 with the Chevette. You know, which was 3 wins for, we call them Mantas and like Opel Mantas, but obviously and Vauxhall in the UK and that, you know. So the 3 wins for Vauxhall, 3 champions for Vauxhall really.
Absolutely, fantastic stuff.
So at the championship, and it was, you know, it was the year of the McLaren. The Lakes Rally was full day, probably sort of Killarney is always very good in the conditions, bit of snow, maybe a nice, that sort of thing,
Yeah, absolutely. So, just to go back to the circuit in '86 as well, Austin, because you're down obviously third overall, and you mentioned it was the last real year, and it was the last real year of Group B rallying as such with those supercars. And, we saw some of the best machinery of all time, iconic cars on these aisles, and you mixed it with them, came third, got obviously the Tarmac Championship points out of that one. And obviously that must be very fun in terms of your memories as well, seeing all those lads and being able to compete with them, despite being severely down on power with the Manta in comparison to your Quattros and all these lads.
Yeah, but you've always had this very competitive, because you have the Gaudi at the earlier start was part of the European Championship. You had some European Championship guys been doing the championship coming over 4 points here. Sunny God, you have guys over testing for the Ulster or the Manx, which would be part of the British Championship rounds that we'll be doing. You'd have the McHale and the Hankin was over, all these guys. And, it was very competitive, but a lot of them, they didn't really do. Obviously, it had the likes of Malcolm Wilson over doing Irish events as well. So it was very competitive, but a lot of them didn't actually do the Tarmac Championship. I think Russell Group won the championship over sometime around 10 years, but I'm not sure when. But, it was competitive, you had the top of your game, and that was it, Rally in Ireland was very competitive in the 80s.
Absolutely, and particularly, the late part of the 80s going on to the early 90s then as well, which was, a very special time. But for you, obviously, 87, you had the Manta still, you had a spin in the Monza as well, only one spin. Am I right in assuming you're probably glad it might have been only the one spin in the Monza, or is it a bit harsh?
What happened in them years was that the Manta was going out on homologation for British Championship rounds, I think it was, and we had to use, obviously we were tied in with Opel, and we had to use an Opel Monza, which is a 3 litre. It was a bit of a tank, but a great solid car, and we, on the circuit, I think we were, we're in the first 3 or so in the class, and we did the circuit, and we had to do the Manx, I think it was, I can't remember, but the Ulster were okay in the Manta. But that was a year of fairly major battles as well, so obviously we had a few wins with the Manta, and one win was the Cork 20 we won that year as well, and that was the one about the controversial 30 seconds that everybody was on about, but I was very adamant on it was, but that was known in the service area, so the crew who were competing a bit, that was the new time of the computerized results, and everybody was handed in the stage times of all the previous stages for the service as we were coming out, so there's no secret about it, but that was that. We won the Cork 20 anyways, and it's something back for after losing to the Gall by a second, so with a few wins in ATA when the Wexford won the Lakes Rally, and that was SI 7755, was the car that was bit new for McHale, bit new in June 86. I can't remember, I think we had it in Donegal, the first time we had it out in 86. But we had that car right to up to the end of 88, and 89 was the end of 88, like the car that arrived the Lakes, we won in SI 7755. That's the last rally I did in that car, so because for 89 we'd moved forward and we had gone with the Sierra Cosworth, and it should have been very competitive, but we just didn't get the results, and was off in Galway, and was off in Donegal, because I was more often in the field than I was on the road in that year with the Cosworth. So we changed that in 1990. We got funds together and got them back in the BMW, and we went for the M3. And Bertie already had been out of the M3, and he was obviously getting good results. So our first won the M3 was the Galway International in 1990. And Bertie was leading the rally, and he was definitely quicker than us in the first time out. But I think he was in some big heavy flood that year, and the car died out, and he dropped time anyway. He dropped time, and we won the event. So it was, that was one of the events we were looking to win, and Bertie should have won it, but that's the way it goes. And we went to West Cork, Sonic Guilty, and we won that as well. So the M3 had been lucky at the start of the year, and in the Circuit of Ireland, it went fairly well, and we were going very competitive, and we had a problem with the clutch back and slipping, so we ended up about fourth, I think it was fourth we were, so the next one then was Donegal, and that was a huge battle again between Bertie and ourselves, in the M3, so we had, of the first 4 outings, we had 1-3, which was very good for the car, and I think we had about 5 wins altogether in the M3 that year, and couldn't complain, the car was very good. We did the banks, and we were very well in the banks, and I can't remember where we were probably in the first 4 or 5 anyway, and we got excluded in the banks, which was a bit of a joke really in a way, because our back tyres were millimetres too wide, i.e. the thickness of your nail and excluded, etc., but we weren't normally worried about that. It wasn't an Irish round, so that was the end of 1990, so we had got the wins, we had 4 wins, and we're very happy with the car, and everybody involved was very happy.
Yeah, and just on that, I suppose, you mentioned you and Bertie both had the M3s. Pole drive being the common denominator here, which one of you kind of went over first, or how did that come about? Did you feel you had to go likewise to go pound for pound? And also, I'll double this up by asking, with the tyres in particular, there was talk of the Circuit of Ireland being a little bit fickle with that as well. There was going to be maybe talk that the Beamers weren't allowed to go. So there was a little bit of controversy surrounding them, which was kind of, a little bit strange, but they're absolutely fantastic cars.
Yeah, well, Bertie was the first to get the M3, and obviously seeing how he was getting on, he said it's a very competitive car, he really liked it, and it was going to be very competitive on tarmac, because Snyder was after winning the bank, so we knew the car was good at the tarmac, but to get the suspension set up from here, because the M3 really racer solid on the road and getting suspension set up properly, and obviously Pro Drive had the ability to do that, and they did that, and they got the car competitive in the World Gold here, got Galway, you get the result in Galway, these very bumpy stages, and the sort of stages I like getting wet, mud stages, and we were very happy he kept the win. Even I said that Bertie was quicker than us, and he had a problem, but then West Cork, it was true, and Donegal was another real battle, so the car overall was very good. And for the year, we won 4 rallies, and maybe beat Bertie Donegal by the 9 seconds or whatever it was, and then in Killarney, we had to finish in the first, I think, 5 to win the championship, and our Dick went, and Bertie won the championship, so you win some, you lose some, so that was great for him as well, so it kept the interest in the M3, so good, and but then you see the 4-wheel drive was coming after that, and for the first half of 91, Galway was the first round, and we were lucky enough again to get a win there in the M3, which was two wins in the trot, really, which was very good for us and for the car. And the next round of the championship was the Circuit of Ireland, and that year we had a fairly monumental battle going on with Colin McRae, Subaru, and he went off maybe on the Saturday afternoon down in Carlow, or Sunday morning, which it was, but put out a load of mud on the road, and we came out over the crest and took off, and we hit a bank and damaged the car, and it's actually Saturday evening, so that's more, I suppose, out of the rally, because we dropped time. The car was badly damaged, but we got some repair done to it on the stage, and that's the end of the stage, and they got some work done that we got back to Dunleary, to base in Dunleary that year. So we got to Dunleary anyway, but there was too much damage done to the car and too much time lost, so we were through. So that was...
to interrupt slightly, the irony of that, I think where you went off is no less than 2 or 3 miles from where we're recording this interview from right now. Would you believe?
You're bringing back good memories, though.
yeah, I think it was up around, we're based around Collection here, and you're kind of on the Carroll-East border, and I'm nearly certain up around there is where you fell foul, so...
I remember that, because we were, Dermot and myself, we were flat out, and I was over this crest, and there was a load of mud pulled out, where Colin had gone off, and of course, I went to this slide on the mud, and it was actually hit a bank and a gate post. So, but it was out the rally, but the car had been running very competitive, and we were very happy with the way things were going, and So we didn't do much that year. After that, we sold the car before Donegal actually to James McDade. He wanted to do Donegal. We won. For us winning the rally the previous year, we received the number one, and James got the number one seat for Donegal. And we were thinking very strongly at the time of moving on to four-wheel drive. So the opportunity came up for the sale of the car, and a good price, let's put it that way. And that was it. So we did nothing then in 91, but the rest of 91, So then in 92, we were looking at four-wheel drive 6R4 Metro, and we've gone down the road a few times with that. So we didn't go that route, but we went a different route with TTE in Cologne in Germany. The Celica was very competitive on the World Championship at the time. I think they could have won the World Championship in 92, 93 with tanking and...
Carlos Sainz as well was very competitive with that car in the World Championship in around then.
Yeah. So we got a rebuilt car. I can't remember the history of it now. It was the GT4 ST165, and it was KAD 4023. So the first time we were out in 1992 with that car was in Galway. And we finished fourth, which wasn't too bad. On the circuit, we had a mechanical problem. There was something with the gearbox. So we finished. We're second in Donegal, and second in Cork, and second in Killarney. I think they're probably all to Bertie. I just can't remember now. But I think who won them. But I know we had 3 seconds anyway in that particular year. And the previous 2 years, they were all sort of wins. But we were still competitive with that car, getting it together. And then moved on to 93, which was fairly good for the 165 because we won Galway the first round, and then we won the circuit at Easter, which was the first circuit win after a lot of disappointment.
Yeah, can I just jump in there for a sec, because 92 was pretty close. There was an awesome battle between Kenny McKinstry, yourself, and Frank Marr. Frank ended up winning kind of, because of the troubles that you two guys had. It was an almighty battle, and obviously, there's one little thing that interests me about 92 as well, Austin, is the fact that it went back to, you weren't allowed pace notes in 92, so, that was a bit mental after coming forward into pace notes and then not allowing them, so there was a lot of rigmarole about that at the time, wasn't there?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly, but over the years, the pace notes was allowed in Donegal, the Ulster, and I can't remember exactly when they changed the full pace notes for all the rounds, but I remember the battle in Galway. Well, I can't Galway, not 100% sure about Bertie, but definitely on the circuit with the Subarus was a major battle, and we got the win in the end with the 165. But
in 93, yeah.
Sorry, 93, yeah. And then Donegal. Donegal. I don't think we actually didn't finish in Donegal. That's the one who was off the top of McHale. We had the spin at the 130, 140 kilometre spin.
On the top of McHale is not the place to be having a spin like that at that speed.
Yeah, it's fairly well known. It's flat out, and it's really commitment. And we a bit of a bump on it. We were lucky. We did the 360 down the road for maybe about half a mile, and we couldn't go off into the sea on one side and the mountain on the other. We're lucky enough with it. Then in the Ulster we had the problem with the brake pedal breaking, and was an accident as well. That was probably the Ulster that year. I think it was probably on around September.
Mm-hmm.
And the brake pedal broke in the car, which was quite frightening. Just coming into a 90 left, maybe I pressed it too hard, and that put us out of the rally. So 93 wasn't a great year, but apart from winning the circuit, obviously winning Galway, it started well, but it finished not great.
Now, just on the whole legacies that time, because obviously you said the opportunity came up to go with Toyota, but were you thinking along the line of Pro Drive and the legacies and going pound for pound with McKinstry and Fisher at the time? Was that a thought process in line with the Metros which you spoke about already?
Yeah, the reason why we went Toyota, obviously we looked at the Subarus, and the Subarus being very competitive with the legacy and with the compete at the World Championship. But Toyota was also competing in the World Championship, and they were very competitive with Carlos Sainz, Tankin and Didi Ariel. So at that time there was two guys from Dublin that I knew, and one of them I knew particularly very well, a guy called Jerry McDonald, and he worked in TTE, and Richard Cregan, and they've been in TTE for a number of years, and Mickey Easton was up and after my cars all the time, had done the Safari and a couple of World Championship rounds with TTE. So we got Toyota Ireland on board, and we've done a deal and got the Celica 185, which was a very, very good car, and we knew it was going to be very competitive. The car was built very strong, like Toyota really built a car that would take a lot of abuse and reliability, and back together we moved on to 94. We still had the 165, and we had some backing from Toyota Ireland, and we decided to do some of the British Championship rounds as well. So we started off at Galway, and we got a second again in Galway, and then we went to Wales, and I think we had a great result in Wales. We were about sixth, and Circuit of Ireland we didn't finish, and then we were back in the Pirelli Rally, and that was fourth as well. I had an English co-driver he's Welsh actually, Howard Davis, and so then we came back and did the Lakes, and the end of the year was the fourth and the car 20. So overall it was, we finished all the events bar one, and the car was competitive enough, but it was, the 185 was starting to come in the World Championship. So we held on for 95. We stayed with the 165 Toyota, and we didn't do a lot of rallies then because we were tied up in business and a lot of different stuff. Sort of 94, 95, 96 weren't great years because we didn't concentrate that much on rallies. We maybe did 3 or 4 rallies a year, and we sold the 165 at the end of I think at the end of 96. And or somewhere through 96 anyway, and we got the 185 for the start of 97.
In part 2 of our conversation with Austin, we chat about winning back-to-back championships in 1997 and 1998, the success of Garrett and Aaron, with all 3 of them competing in Rally Ireland together, and much more to look forward to as well. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, and if you could rate the podcast on whatever platform you're listening on, that would be greatly appreciated. You can also email us at irishrallypodcast@gmail.com. Chat to you again soon. Take care. This podcast is sponsored by FAC, the simply automatic choice for automation equipment for gates, doors, barriers and rising bollards. Available from your security installer and electrician. Distributed to the trade in Ireland North and South by National Automation, the one-stop distributor for automation equipment, door entry intercom systems, CCTV, intruder and fire alarms, access control and locks. For more information, visit nal.ie/products.